Rebellions, revolution, betrayals. Our people, Colonel, are becoming more of a problem than our enemies. Now, there's a mission for you. Make our people love us or die. These papers will instruct you to crush one of our own towns into submission. Put down a faction of our own military that threatens us with biological warfare. To assassinate the spies in our midst. To annihilate an entire province. Men, women, and children who contest our Soviet might. They say, don't tell us what to do. So, we must kill them. This time, comrade, we drink.
Yes, ready and waiting. At once.
Awaiting
Vehicle
orders.
reporting.
Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Of course.
Affirmative. Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Vehicle report.
Acknowledged.
Ready and
Vehicle
waiting.
acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative.
Awaiting orders. At once.
Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Acknowledged. Of course.
Reporting. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Lost.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
lost.
Affirmative. 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 Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Reinforcements have arrived.
Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Need a job power on.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost. Reinforcements
Use
have arrived.
power on. It's done.
Comrade.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
New construction options.
Waiting order. Acknowledged.
Building.
Got yes.
Affirmative.
Unable to comply. Building in progress. Construction complete.
Yes,
New
sir.
construction options.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Waiting order.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. New construction options.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged, sir. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction
Affirmative.
complete. Building.
Waiting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Cannot deploy here. Cannot deploy here.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Reporting.
Affirmative.
Unable to comply. Building in progress. Construction complete. New construction options. Building. Construction complete. Building.
Yes, sir.
Base is under attack. Unable to comply. Building in
Waiting.
progress.
Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Construction complete. New construction options.
Yes,
Building.
sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building. Prepare.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Waiting order.
Reporting.
Construction complete.
Yes, sir. Ready and waiting.
Affirmative.
Building. On hold.
Yes, sir.
Cancel.
Affirmative. Waiting
Building.
order. Affirmative.
Base is under attack. Construction
Yes, sir.
complete.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Awaiting
Yes, sir.
orders.
Acknowledged.
Building. On hold.
Yes, sir.
Cancel. Building.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Construction
Acknowledged.
complete. Building.
Reporting. Acknowledged.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Waiting order.
Ready and waiting.
Yes, sir.
Reporting.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Unable to comply. Building in progress. Construction complete. New construction options. Building. Building. Construction complete. New construction options. Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir.
Awaiting orders.
Acknowledged. Comrade, acknowledged. Comrade, affirmative, acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit
Affirmative.
ready.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Base is under attack. Repairing.
Yes, sir.
Unit
yes,
ready.
sir. Acknowledged.
Building.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Repairing.
Awaiting orders.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building. Insufficient
Acknowledged.
funds.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Vehicle
Unit ready.
reporting.
Building.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Reporting.
Yes, sir.
Vehicle reporting. Vehicle reporting.
Our base is under attack.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Waiting. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
sir.
ready.
Affirmative.
Building.
Report. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Vehicle reporting.
Comrade. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Reporting.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Yes, sir.
Building.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Our base
Acknowledged.
is under attack.
Vehicle reporting. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Need a jump? Let's
Awaiting
start.
orders.
Unit ready.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Insufficient
Reporting.
funds.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Vehicle
Affirmative.
report. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Comrade,
Vehicle
acknowledged.
acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Select target.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reinforcements have arrived.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes,
Report.
sir.
Affirmative. Affirmative.
Ready and waiting. Once. Very well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Ready and waiting.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Very well. Very well.
Our base is under attack. On hold. Cancel. Building. Unit
Acknowledged.
lost.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged.
Comrade. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
On hold.
Comrade. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Reporting. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Vehicle reporting.
Yes, sir.
Unit lost.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Yes,
Acknowledged.
sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
ready.
Comrade.
Building.
Acknowledged. Comrade. Acknowledged.
Awaiting orders. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Insufficient funds.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Reporting. Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative.
ready.
Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Acknowledged.
Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
lost.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Select target.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Building.
Acknowledged.
Unit
Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
insufficient
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
unit ready.
Affirmative.
Reinforcements have arrived.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Got juice?
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
ready. Our base
Affirmative.
is under attack.
Acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Ready and waiting.
Affirmative. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Yes, sir.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit ready. Building.
Acknowledged.
Comrade.
Lost.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
On hold.
Yes, sir.
Cancel.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir.
Building. Select target. Reinforcements have arrived. Unit ready.
Waiting acknowledged.
Building.
Acknowledged.
Insufficient funds.
Yes, sir.
Construction complete. Primary building selected. Unit
Waiting
ready.
order. Affirmative.
Building.
Acknowledged. Comrade. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Mad tank deployed.
Yeah?
Unit lost.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Waiting for affirmative.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Select target.
Reporting.
Insufficient
Affirmative.
funds. Unit
Affirmative.
lost.
Acknowledged.
Unit ready. Building. Unit lost.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Report. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Unit ready.
Awaiting
Yes,
orders.
Building.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Select target. Reinforcements have arrived.
Yes,
Unit
sir.
ready.
Reporting.
Building.
Acknowledged. Reporting. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Insufficient
reporting
funds.
orders. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Awaiting
Reporting
orders.
at once.
Got juice? Power on.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Reporting.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Acknowledged.
Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Vehicle report. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Lost.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit
Acknowledged.
building.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged.
Unit lost.
Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. 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 Affirmative.
Reporting.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative.
Unit lost. Select target. Reinforcements have arrived.
Reporting.
Unit
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. 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 Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Sufficient
Affirmative.
funds.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Unit
Acknowledged. Reporting. Agreed. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Acknowledged. 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 Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting.
Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting.
Acknowledged.
Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Waiting order. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Affirmative.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Reporting. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Acknowledged.
Vehicle reporting.
Insufficient funds.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged. Yes, sir. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Target. Reinforcements have
Waiting
arrived.
order. Acknowledged. Vehicle reporting.
Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Acknowledged.
Yes, sir. Affirmative. Yes, sir.
Reporting. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Acknowledged. Affirmative. Affirmative.
Mission accomplished.